Brooke Turner from Vision West. Brooke, kia ora. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
This is the very much the upside down kingdom of God, isn't it? Where Jesus says, hey, you think this, but let's invert that. And that's very much the theme of the Sermon on the Mount. But how would you define poverty of spirit? What does it look like in the communities that you serve, Brooke?
Yeah, well, I think it's actually a very deep sense of despair that people carry. So material hardship often, or material poverty can be solved actually. It takes resourcing to solve it, but you can solve those things quite quickly. Someone doesn't have food, you feed them. Matthew 25, they're homeless. You bring them into a home. They have no clothes, you clothe them. They have no shelter, you offer shelter. They have no job, you offer them a job. But when there's a despairing that happens in the human spirit, that's what I determine and think about with that phrase in Matthew and the Beatitudes, poor in spirit, is like, and what's amazing is that Jesus is actually saying, blessed are those who are despairing in their spirits.
Yeah.
If we think about that. And if we take that a step further, saying, well, if blessed are those, then what's happening in that space? And I think part of it is, and I'm sure listeners can sort of resonate with this, is that when do we cry out to God the most?
Yeah.
When we are in greatest need,
Yeah.
right? So my understanding is that blessed are the poor in spirit because you actually see the kingdom of God, you reach out for God, you call on God in those moments.
And that can be a beautiful thing indeed when we come to the end of ourselves, when we are faced with the reality of the myth of our own self-reliance and saying, you know what, I cannot do this anymore. I'm going to need somebody else's help. And for some people, that's crying out to God. For other people, the importance of community, of people to come alongside when their spirit is broken and they just can't do it anymore, that there's somebody else who can come alongside and say, hey, let me help you with that. And again, maybe not practical needs, maybe just being there, maybe just sitting with that person, maybe walking alongside them in their despair.
Absolutely. And, we have these narratives that are spoken over our lives, and we see this in the lives of many of the people we work with at Vision West, but I also just see it in my own life and in the lives of my loved ones or family members, where it might be that in a particular area of your life, you've stumbled and you've fallen and you haven't done well. Maybe you haven't, maybe school wasn't a great place for you and you've really struggled to achieve academically.
Yeah.
And so you sit in this despairing part of your heart that, oh, I'm not good enough because you didn't, I don't know, get bursary or ever go to university. And actually, I think there's a responsibility. The thing I love about the life of Jesus and, when we think about like great hallmark heroes of faith, is that often these people have come alongside communities, come alongside individuals, and helped people to see something in themselves they couldn't see at first. And it is so incredible when we actually do that. I have my own journey of, having dyslexic tendencies and struggling in school, and then going on to do a master's degree and a RIT master's in social practice, which, was not for the faint-hearted, and I cried my way through it, and but it was other people around me that said, the narrative that was spoken over your life, Brooke, when you were a teenager, is not your narrative now.
Yeah.
You can change that narrative. The book's still getting written on your life. So I think those people who are poor in spirit, sometimes it's holding the pen with them and saying, how can we write a new chapter?
And hey, when it comes to poverty, yes, there's economic poverty, and that's real, and you see the reality of that every day, and there's people who are perhaps concerned and anxious about what's happening in the world, both environmentally and politically. But that social aspect, I think it's Proverbs that says that pity the man who falls down when he's alone and he's got nobody to pick them up. The disconnection, the loneliness, the people who are poor in spirit and don't have a cheerleader to encourage them, that's deep poverty, isn't it?
It really is. And, you think about isolation and just I often think about the power of empathy, where you're with someone who gets alongside you and says, "Hey, I feel your pain." And maybe they resonate with you because they've had a similar experience or an experience in a different context, but that resonates with your experience. When we feel like we're on our own, when we feel like that thing that we're dealing with, it's just us.
Yeah.
That can bring shame, that can bring a sense of burden that we don't feel like we can carry on our own. And often we can't carry that on our own,
Yeah.
right? But to your point about community, when we're able to start sharing what that thing is, and we realize, hey, I'm not the only one with dyslexic tendencies and who struggled at school. Actually, a whole bunch of people around me have struggled with that. You know, and then they say, but you can still conquer that fear. You can still overcome. I'm here to show you that you can do that. And that's what I had in my story, and that's what I see playing out in those community stories. And obviously, the life of church and faith is one that is so conducive to that kind of story. I wonder how many people are arriving in churches across the country this week who someone in their family has lost employment.
Yeah.
Someone in their family is on reduced hours. Someone in their family maybe is reaching out for social service support. Do they feel like they can actually share that in our congregations? Are we welcoming enough? Are we transparent enough for that story to be held well? Because as a community of faith, you'd hope that that would be the case.
Yeah.
I often hear stories of amazing churches doing just that kind of work, and I'm sure many of your listeners are in some of those churches. For some of us, maybe it's a chance for us to put our hands up if we're doing a little bit better than others and say, hey, who needs help? Or if we're struggling, to say, hey, I need help. And we create a community of support by doing so.
And that comes back to the idea of blessed are the poor in spirit as well, that when we get to the end of ourselves, when we realize that we can't do this alone, when a poverty of spirit takes us beyond our shame and putting mental energy into pretending that things are better than they actually are, that's when the real conversations can start. That's when the healing journey can begin.
That's right. And, I often think about that, Andrew, and I have this little reminder on my phone that says, and it pops up every single day, and it just says a simple phrase: listen to the person, not their words. Because we are so good at using our words, using our body language to present what we think the world in front of us wants to see. I'm able, I'm capable, yeah, things are tough, but I've got this, I'm all good.
Yeah.
Whereas on the inside, we're going, I don't know if I can last another week, or I really feel like I've got no one to talk to, or, and I think when we truly listen to people, we begin to hear the cries of their heart. And of course, that's what God does with us.
Yeah.
And that's what he asks us to do with one another. Greater love has no one than this, than they lay their lives down for their friends. This is how you'll know that they're my disciples, by the love they have for one another. To me, that's a very practical love. It's not this esoteric sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's a very practical, who is this person in front of me? How do I stand with them? How do I support them? And actually, when I'm vulnerable, how do I show that by sharing my vulnerability, we can be stronger together?
Such a good thing to do. And I love the practical point of saying, hey, at church this Sunday, who is in need of a conversation? Maybe that is you, but maybe that is somebody sitting alongside you in church on a Sunday morning. If we as a faith community can't do this, then what hope is there for the rest of society in this regard? Hey, very much appreciate, Brook, the work that you do at Vision West and for the wisdom that you bring. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.